right, everybody, it's 6:05. Time to get going. My name is Xander Ruiz, and I am bringing you Breaking the College Admissions Code. And today, what I want to go through is a little bit about the basics when it comes to college admissions, some of the challenges when it comes to what we're facing now when it comes to 2025 and moving forward, some of the challenges looking back, of the challenges that we experienced in the last 5 years and how that's kind of affecting us now. And then I want to give as much information to the folks here to let them see what they're going to be experiencing during the time of college applications, from literally from alpha to omega, which means that I want to be able to answer any questions that the community might have regarding college admissions, from literally the basics, from the 101s all the way to omega, which is the most difficult question that you can potentially ask. So do not hesitate today. This is your opportunity to ask any questions that you might have about this. This is also our first college information session of our season. And so we will be having one of these every single month for summer. And so each one of our sessions will go deeper and deeper into these different subjects. And so while we are going over the 101s today, next month we'll be going over the 102s. And so do not hesitate to invite your friends and family, as this will be information that is valuable for them regardless of when they'll be applying to colleges, universities, or whichever season that they might be. So before I do that, let's go ahead and introduce you a little bit to our organization, Link Educational Institute. Link Educational Institute, we're located in Claremont, California, but we work with students internationally. Just this past year, we worked with students in Chicago, in Washington, Florida, and in several different locations throughout the United States. But in addition to that, we've also worked with students internationally from Japan, China, Taiwan, Canada, Ecuador, Mexico, so on and so forth. And so we really know how to navigate the system regardless of where our students are coming from and regardless of the variables that they may be facing. And so our goal with Link Education is to make the college application process as welcoming and as absorbable as possible, and at times as fun as it can be. When we're creating things like resumes and essays, that could be tedious and cumbersome. But when you're asking the bigger pictures and you're getting students to develop along the way, it could be a much more favorable journey for them. And this is me, the guy with the beard and the glasses. So I'm Xander. I am the main college consultant here at Link Education. And for the most part, what I do is that I work with families to light the yellow brick road to higher education. And so for the most part, my journey began in my undergrad, where I began in Miami, Florida. And I've worked in that university to get my bachelor's of psychology. And then from there, I worked over in Georgia to get my master's of education. From there, I've worked at colleges and universities in Florida, Georgia, Indiana, Pennsylvania, and here in California. I've worked at large privates, small publics. I've worked at large publics and small privates. And so that's kind of how I've come to understand the college system, is through understanding it from the inside and through the outside. But what you're here for is to understand some of the essentials of college admissions. So let's start off with the last couple of years. In the last 5 years, as one would imagine, the pandemic in 2020 really knocked college admissions for a loop. And while before it was a very consistent system that didn't change, in the last couple of years, it has actually changed quite dramatically. And so in college admissions, where before SATs and ACT exams were mandatory for just about any student applying to any system, these things have now kind of gone by the wayside depending on the system that you're applying to. Things like college essays and application material has gone up in importance where testing has gone down. Things like rigor and AP exams have gone up again in order to supplement things like testing for the SAT and the ACT. And so some of these systematic things that have changed have been very favorable for students. But for families, with things changing so often, can often be a very, very confusing process for the student, let alone for mom and dad who are trying to guide them through this application process. So, what challenges are we facing in the application these upcoming years, or these last couple of years, rather? Well, in the last 5 years, every single year we have been seeing more and more students applying to more and more schools. Year after year, we are seeing 5 to 6% increases in applications going out to universities across the nation. And so this is from all of our Ivies to our safety and state schools. You're seeing an application increase throughout. And so what this means is with an increase in applications, you have an increase in the ability to compete, right? If you have more people competing for a spot, well, you're going to have less percentages for admit rates. And to emphasize this point, you can actually see some institutions from around the nation over here, from Boston all the way to Yale, and you can see that admit rates in the last 5 years have pretty much gone down throughout. And so even in Boston College, where things were at 26% in 2020 for the class of 2023, for the class of 2027, that's gone down pretty dramatically down to 15%. And while we will always have exceptions to the rule, for example, we have Tulane over here that started off with a 13% for the class of 2023. It went down for a couple of years down to 9.7%, 10%, and actually went back up this past year to 13%. So there are also exceptions to the rule when it comes to um, uh, uh, the admit rates, but for the most part, as you can see throughout, very much admit rates have gone down again from Ivies all the way to your safety schools in the United States as a byproduct of the increase of applications that students are sending and universities are receiving. And this is a major point that I want to make today. Um, one of the things that we've seen since the pandemic is a huge influx of mental health issues in students of all populations, regardless if that is students of high school age or if that is students of kind of younger at the end of the day. And so, for the most part, what we're seeing is that this influx of students with mental health concerns are aggregating over to the college application process. So 70% of high school students experience stress or mental health concerns related to college admissions. And this is a pretty straightforward, right? Of course, they're going to have stress or mental health concerns when you're dealing with a process that has changed pretty dramatically in the last 5 years. Additionally, so many students put emphasis on their self-worth based off of the results that they get in the college admissions process that they will often feel deterred from even applying at all. Again, to emphasize this point, just in January, there's this article on parents.com that came out that said 1 in 8 students are abandoning college dreams due to the application stress altogether. So this study is showing that an eighth, essentially, of our, or a little bit less than eighth, of our student population is very much going through these mental health concerns, especially during the fall and during the upcoming months when it comes to actually submitting and creating their application material at the end of the day. So, what is it that college are looking for when it comes to the admissions process? Of course, we see the challenges from the student side. Here's what the colleges are kind of looking for when it comes to students and applicants. So, most institutions are going to tout what they call a holistic admissions process. This idea of a holistic admissions process is essentially based off of the idea that an institution is going to look at more than just a student's academic background. They're going to look at the student as a leader. They're going to look at the student in the activities that they've been doing in the last 3 to 4 years of high school. They're going to be looking at a student's overall GPA, their every single aspect of their high school curriculum. So they're looking at many different aspects. And again, this is often to offset what we've been seeing in the pandemic, which is less or reduced use of testing when it comes to standardized testing, the SAT, the ACT in particular. So let's go into each one of these. And so the number one thing that any institution, again, whether it be Ivy Leagues, all the way to your state institutions, are going to be looking for within this holistic admissions process is going to be rigor. So what is rigor? Rigor for students means essentially many of the numbers that they're getting. Numbers with regard to their GPAs, right? This is going to be cumulative, but also those semester GPAs. This is going to be grades, which obviously add up to GPA. So this is going to be the A's, the B's that they get in their individual courses. This is going to be the academic merits that they receive throughout, whether they're going to be on the presidential honors list or some sort of academic honors. The research that they've done in high school. Yes, high school students can and are they can and should be doing some level of research. They don't need to be changing the world with the research that they do, but they should be going into it at a level that is understandable and comprehensible for them to be able to show that they are able to analyze numbers and use those numbers in a way to assess the byproduct of those numbers. And of course, we're looking at rigor with regard to course levels. And what I mean by this is that if students are taking AP courses or they're taking IB courses, these courses are much higher rigor. They are much more difficult courses, in which case, many instances, they will also be receiving what is called a weighted GPA, which means that if a regular GPA was at a 4.0, for example, for a perfect GPA, if you take nonstop AP courses, you're going to be able to get 4.1s, 4.2s, 4.5s, and it's going to weight your GPA higher. And while admissions officers often look at these numbers and these merits and these areas for rigor, oftentimes where they're getting their information about where and how much rigor the student has done is through their letters of recommendation. And so, as you may know, during your college application process, some of the material that you need to submit is at least 2 letters of recommendation. And these letters of recommendation are often going to explain the student's merits, GPAs, course levels, so on and so forth. So that way it becomes a little bit more comprehensible to the admissions officers and much more legible for them as well. So this is going to be the number one thing that admissions officers are looking for when it comes to college applications and their material. Is how hard their classes and how high they were able to achieve in those difficult classes. Next, we are looking at a student's portfolio. And so some people might call this a resume, some people might call this a brag sheet, some people might call this an activity sheet. But for the most part, what we're seeing is this portfolio becoming more and more part of college application systems. And so right now, 27% of college admissions officers ranked extracurricular activities as the most important factor in college admissions decisions. And so, one aspect that is often going to be overlooked by students is that there is a section in the Common Application, it is a section of 10 different activities. In the UC application or the University of California application, that can go up to 20 activities, where you describe each activity that you did in great detail. And while some students may look at this and try to keep things very simple, for the most part, we try to make our students write things in a lot more detail so that, again, admissions officers know not only what they did, but how they did it and why they did it. So again, creating a portfolio that is in line with your major or the institution that you're looking at, or something that is a puzzle piece to your future, is going to be heavily weighted now in the college application system and within your materials. Next, we talked a little bit about this, but we have testing. This is one of the things that has fundamentally changed in college applications. And that's because, again, the pandemic really moved us from a test mandatory to a test optional or a test blind. Let me explain some of these vocabulary words, if you will. So there are institutions in our nation right now that are still test mandatory. What is test mandatory? As one would imagine, these are institutions where you must take the SAT or you must submit an ACT score in order to be considered. And so many times these are going to be high achieving institutions like MIT, where they're looking at the numbers in order to add another level of dimension to this holistic admissions process. And so again, yes, testing has been reduced in our process, but there are still many schools that are going back to test mandatory. So it's not something that one should overlook altogether. What we're seeing now, especially here in California and in many other states as well, is more of an influx of test optional and test blind policies. So let me give you an example. The California State University system has what we call a test blind system, which means that even if you score a perfect SAT or a perfect ACT, they will not view that for admissions into their system. Even if you have the most optimal test score, that is not going to be a part of the material that you submit to the Cal States. And so therefore, it is not part of the variables that they're going to consider for admissions. And so in that sense, if you are looking for example, just Cal States, well, it is not something that I would advise to do a lot of test prep because again, those institutions, even if you did really well, are going to be test blind. Now, there are other test schools that what we call test optional. These institutions are, again, are exactly what it sounds like. If you did particularly well on the exam, you can submit those scores for as a variable to get admitted into that institution. But if you did poorly or if you didn't take it at all, you do not need to submit any score. And so sometimes schools will do an apples to apples approach. Well, they will compare their testing students to their testing students, and then their non-testing students to their non-testing students before they integrate them together. But again, that's very general. Some institutions will just view them all together. And so this is something to know again as you're preparing for the college application process. There are many, many, many students that have come to me with test scores thinking that it's going to be the end all be all, but then they are applying to only test optional or test blind schools. And so if you don't need to spend that money, if you don't need to spend that time or that effort, then know again what institutions may be a little bit more apt to accept things without or accept applications without these test scores. And then finally, the piece of the holistic admissions process that we haven't uh, discussed just yet is our application materials. And so our application materials can be very different depending on the system that you're applying to. So again, I'm going to reference Cal States and University of California since we're in California right now. But for the most part, there are other systems such as the University of Texas system where the application materials are going to be different based off of where you're applying to. So as an example, Cal State's, their application material is very, very simple. They do not have any essays that you need to write. As I mentioned, they are test blind, so you do not need to submit any of your tests. And for the most part, all they're looking for is your A through G requirements, your test, your GPA, and um, your transcripts at the end of the day. And so that's how they're determining admissions is mostly through your transcripts and through your GPA and your location because it is Cal State. From there, the University of California system is a little bit more complex. From them, you have much of the same material that you need to submit to the Cal States, right? Test scores, transcripts, basic information such as name and maiden name and all that stuff. But the University of California system also has an area for your activities. Like I mentioned, you have an area for around 20 different activities that you can write out in full detail of what the student did, how they did it, why they did it. And one of the more interesting parts of the UC University of California application is they have what we call PIQs or personal insight questions. They have a list of around 8 different questions that are meant for essays, around 350 words each, and you need to answer around 4 of them. And so students would answer those 4 questions in essay format, and then those materials will then be sent off to every single University of California school that they're applying to. And so in this way, your material needs to be a little bit more general so that it's not saying that I want to apply to UCLA and then all of the other UCs get that material saying that you just want UCLA, right? Where this is different is the Common Application. The Common Application is a one-stop shop for a lot of different private schools and state schools in our nation. You can have dozens of different schools and apply to each one of them in that same Common Application. Now, the Common Application, as one imagines, has some common aspects to it. For example, they have this thing called a personal statement. The personal statement is an essay that the student needs to write of around 650 words, where they're telling the university a story and or their credentials about themselves. From there, there's also an activity section, again, around 10 different activities that they have the ability to write about. And then from there, the thing that makes the Common App really, really interesting is that each institution can ask their own number of things. And while some schools, I think off the top of my head, like the University of La Verne, will ask 0 questions and require 0 things for the applicant to submit, and so therefore all they need to submit is that basic information, there are schools more so like one would imagine Stanford and Harvard, where they're going to ask you multiple questions, and those questions need to be answered in anywhere between a 250-word essay to, even up to 1,000-word essay. And then there are schools, even for example, like University of Southern California, where they'll ask you some questions and they'll expect you to answer it in a single word. So, for example, they have 10 questions where they're just trying to get to know your personality, and they'll ask you things like, what's your favorite song? And you're supposed to answer it within a single line or a single word. And so the materials that one needs in order to apply can be varied based off of the system that they're applying to. And so again, it is very important to do your homework ahead of time so that way you're not overdoing it and especially that you're not underdoing it. And so that is often where we are helping our students through our educational consulting. And so this is one of our success stories with our student Lena, who got admitted into Cornell. I'll just play a quick little synopsis
My
of
name
her
is Lena
experience with
Shapiro.
us, and I'll
I went
make it a little
to
bit
Los
quicker so
Osos High
that we're
School
not here for.
and plan to attend Cornell University in the fall. So I worked with Link Education starting like my summer before senior year, like very short before summer. And I guess if I want to start with initial concerns, I was just really stressed out because of how late I was starting and how little I knew about the whole essay writing process, applications, extracurriculars, how to write about my extracurriculars in a way that really shows myself and my identity and my like future pursuits, I guess. So that I was just really confused with the whole process. I knew there was like certain ways to go about it and like things to write about in the essays, and I just really was looking for a professional that could just walk me through and tell me what I need to do, and just for that like not only moral support but keeping on track because senior year is a pretty difficult year. I stacked my schedule with like 5 APs, and I just needed someone to keep me on it and to just check in with. So those were some of my initial concerns, I guess. But my experience with Link Education was very much my.
Okay, well, it didn't get there, but for the most part, if you saw the transcripts on the bottom, it said, we were the answer to her questions. And so we're very much here to answer any questions and again, light the yellow brick road with our students to make sure that they have a fulfilling destiny when it comes to the outcome of their process. And as you can see over here, this is her admissions letter over into Cornell, of course, an Ivy League. And
My
so,
name is Lena
one of the
Shapiro.
things that we're very, very proud of is the outcomes that we have with the educational consulting that we do. We get students into Berkeley, Cornell, things like Seattle University, UCSDs, or UCs, Cal States, and everything in between. And so we're very proud to make sure that our students not only have a fulfilling process, but also have a process that isn't going to cause overdue stress and is going to be a lot more fun and manageable than an average college application process would go without our assistance, without a coach, without a mentor. And the one thing that I wanted to offer to everyone in this chat is a free college planner. This is something that we use in our program to make sure that students are ideating and brainstorming the things that are important for this process. And this is a tool that we use internally to make sure that our brainstorming and our college application kind of list and college application readiness is kind of at its peak. And so this is a free planner that I'm giving to everybody on this call. The only thing that you would need to do in order to grab that would be to go on our website. We would go over here to what we do, to Ultimate College Planner. You can fill out this little registration, which literally just asks for your name and email, and we'll send this right over to you in an email and an ebook as well. And so, for the most part, again, you'll see that this is going to help abundantly, regardless of if you use us or not. And for the most part, you can see a byproduct of something like this. This is one of our students that used the Ultimate College Planner and our services. And you can see some of the things that they've done. For example, this is from last season. They have all of their personal statements, and we have everything in a single document. And what's important to note isn't even what is written in this document, but what we have over here, which is 59 pages of work that we worked diligently with the student in order to create material that is an excellent representation of who they are. And this particular student got into Carnegie Mellon, and that's where they'll be going for their fall. And so, again, if you're looking for an extra resource to kind of help you with the process of what you're going to be experiencing in the upcoming years with the college applications, feel free to go to our website, sign up for this planner, and you'll get that right in your email. We are here to help. And so, regardless if you have very advanced questions or very 101 questions, we are here for any of those. I am happy to educate anyone when it comes to what it takes in order to get into what school. And so, if you need any assistance at all, I urge you not to hesitate to give us a call. This is my direct cell phone. So even if you don't want to give me a call and talk to me on the phone, if you just want to text me, feel free to do so over here. And if none of those work, you can even email me over here at contact at Link Educational Institute. I am the person who will be responding regardless. And so with that being said, I'm happy to take any questions at this time. And again, it could be anything from high level questions all the way to 101 basic level questions. Feel free to put those in the chat, or if you'd like, you can even unmute yourself and ask them out loud. If not, then I invite everyone to have a wonderful evening, and thank you for coming. Again, thank you for your time, and I will be here regardless if you have questions now or later. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful evening, everyone. I'll stay on for roughly 3, 4 more minutes to see if anybody has questions. If not, then after that point, I will close the meeting. And that everybody had a wonderful evening.